Start of the month means it's tier list time again, ranking all of Marvel Snap Series 4 and 5 cards that are the most expensive resource costs to pick up so you can make informed decisions on where to be spending your collector's tokens and when to be opening your Spotlight caches. As always, I own every single card in Marvel Snap, and I've played games with all of these cards and spent lots of times poring over metagame data to inform my takes here. Let's get right to it, shall we? Starting at the top of our tier list with cards that I would rank as flexible and powerful, these are some of the best cards you could spend your resources picking up in Marvel Snap. They are key components in one or more top decks in the format, and they are often difficult to replace without severely reducing the power level of whatever deck you're replacing them in. Jeff the Baby Landshark definitely is the top #1 most flexible and powerful card in Snap right now. Not only is it a card that is arguably the best 2-drop in the game, but it's really good against and good with Professor X, which is a premier format-defining card in the various lockout decks that are seeing play right now. Jeff is probably the #1 card I get asked how people can replace it in their Snap decks, and the actual answer is just, you really can't. You can sub Nightcrawler in some spots or something like Lizard or Scorpion in others, but any of those cards that you're replacing Jeff with are going to cost you a lot of percentage points in a lot of spots, and your decks will just be much better with access to an adorable baby Landshark. Our next card here, Darkhawk, has been in the flexible and powerful category since it released, and it remains there today. Key card in the Zabu Darkhawk deck. That's one of the top decks in the format. Also very good into Thanos, the next deck card in the flexible and powerful category, because Thanos decks start large, so Darkhawk gets even bigger against those. I also think Darkhawk is an excellent card to be brewing with. You can kind of shove Darkhawk and its package of other cards, whether it's Zabu and Rock Slide, or Black Widow and Korg and Beast, into a variety of different shells to make them more competitive against a variety of things. Thanos is back on top in our tier list this month, with the Thanos Lockout control deck being the deck to beat in Conquest and also being a force to be reckoned with on the ladder. He definitely belongs in the flexible category on top of powerful, though, because there's also a variety of B-rate and C-rate brews, such as my own personal favorite, Thanos Hela Lockjaw Surfer Destroy, that he is irreplaceable in as well. My best decks video recently, I called out High Evolutionary as a card that I think is currently underplayed. High Evolutionary took a couple of nerfs in the last patch, which always causes people to decrease the play rate of any card that gets adjusted in a negative way. That being said, this card is still incredibly powerful. 2 of my 5-0 Infinity Conquest runs are on the back of the High Evolutionary She-Hulk build, but I think the Lockjaw and Lockout builds are also still very good with this card, and it deserves to be in this powerful category, and is definitely flexible, being not replaceable in a variety of different decks that are looking to leverage his evolved cards. Kitty Pryde, another phenomenal card that still remains flexible and powerful after getting nerfed. Now just a 1/2 that gets +1 when she bounces back to your hand. Kitty Pryde's actually better in some situations than she was previously, while being worse in others. She's still seeing play inside of Sarah decks and bounce decks, and even other fan favorites like my own, like the Jean Grey control deck. I think she's good in a ton of different spots, giving you a flexible way to spend your energy while also having strong synergy with a variety of other cards. Zabu is Zabu. No other card in the game does what Zabu does, making all of your 4 costs cheaper. The Zabu Darkhawk deck is arguably one of the top decks in Marvel Snap right now, and it also sees play in other B-rate things that are looking to combo you with Wong or put Mr. Negative into play a turn earlier. I think Zabu is an excellent pickup if you're interested in playing any of the decks that contain this card. Rounding out our flexible and powerful category this month is a newcomer in Legion, who duplicates a location that you play him out to across the entirety of the board. While Legion was thought to just be this combo lockout card with Storm on turn 5, he does so much more than that. The best Legion decks that we know of so far are actually just the good stuff Darkhawk decks that are playing Legion as a top-end card to mitigate some location variance, and also just occasionally get an I win button into certain locations like Death's Domain or Bar with No Name. I think Legion definitely punches above his expected weight class and is a card that can go into a variety of shells in addition to these top tier ones. Moving along to our narrow and powerful category, Stature is still putting up impressive stats inside of the Zabu Darkhawk deck that I've mentioned a couple of times already. Speculatively, I think Stature could even move up into flexible and powerful when we get to next month's review, because Silver Samurai will be releasing at some point inside of August, which will be another powerful enabler for this 1 energy 6 power card. Hitmonkey is down but not out. Some bounce variations have experimented with cutting Hitmonkey, but it's still present in all of these Serra control lists that are playing it to good effect at the top end of their curve on turn 6 for an impressive stat line. Null is a card I've bounced around on this tier list a lot. I'm not 100% sure where exactly it's supposed to end up at. It's seeing play inside of the dedicated Destroy decks as a powerful top end. There's still Galactus variations that have it bouncing around, as well as other random brews like Negative with Arnim Zola. Overall, I think it definitely belongs in the narrow and powerful category, because at least something that this card is doing has to be busted with its powerful effect. I'm going to get a little bit small as we move on into the second half of our tier list here, because let's be honest, we'd all rather look at pictures of Marvel Snap cards than my ugly mug. Starting off with the flexible and fine category here, I actually have the old image for Spider-Ham, who is now a 2/2 that still porks the most expensive card in your opponent's hand. Spider-Ham has gone from being the objectively best top tier cheap disruptive card to just being a reasonable and fine disruptive card that's just like in the same power class category as other similarly costed cards. I think the Spider-Ham, Iceman, Scorpion, all of these cards are better or worse in different situations, and it's a fine choice if you're looking for a disruptive 2 energy play still. Silk continues to be one of my favorite 2 energy cards in Marvel Snap. She has Express Synergy with cards like Kraven or Angela that reward you for moving things around. She can get into difficult to access places that have been flooded or Sanctum Sanctorum, and she's just a very efficient amount of power for simply 2 energy. I think Jean Grey was actually one of the biggest winners from the bounce deck decreasing in popularity. Her board control effect, forcing people to play their first card each turn if possible in her path, is very disruptive, especially into a number of top decks in the format right now that are looking to slam a Professor X down. Jean says you basically have to be Xing her path, which makes it much easier to predictably contest what these lockout decks are doing. Iron Lad copying the text of the top card of your deck is very powerful inside of the Thanos control deck. I've mentioned a few times copying things such as Claw or Devil Dinosaur or Professor X are quite powerful there. It also sees play in a variety of Darkhawk shells and shows up in more B-tier deck lists like Patriot from time to time as well. Nebula is still just a pretty solid 1 energy play. There's less Kitty Prides than there were in the format previously, which incidentally also means there's fewer Killmongers, so I think Nebula is a bit better positioned this month than she was last month. She also stands to grow larger in the face of lockout decks with this, which is quite good as well. I think you could maybe even make the argument that Nebula could be upgraded to the powerful category, but flexible and fine definitely fits her at a minimum. Mirage is the newest card to be included on this tier list as of my recording of it, but I've really been impressed by her overall. She is a card that gives you a valuable information, copying the lowest cost card in your opponent's hand while adding 2 stats to it, while also providing a pretty efficient rate for the stats that she's putting on the board. Because if you play out the card that you copied with her, she's effectively providing 4 stats for 2 energy. I think Mirage is arguably best in class for 2 energy cards that generate additional cards for the purposes of triggering things like the Collector or making things cheaper with Quinjet. Moving along to our narrow and fine category, I think all of the cards in this grouping are either key cards inside of a B tier deck, or they're a tech card that's really powerful under the right metagame circumstances. Living Tribunal is the namesake in the decks that it's played in, and after its recent buff up to 9 power, we'll get that image corrected for next month, it's bigger than ever before. I think the Living Tribunal deck is actually genuinely good into the Thanos control deck that's running around. That being said, because the Thanos control deck has become popular, there's also a little bit more ongoing hate in the format, which is a little bit of a double-edged sword for this card. MODOK's a key enabler in discard decks that are interested in playing him, often not being replaceable inside of those shells. That being said, all of those shells I think come up a little bit short in the current metagame, with none of them having particularly impressive stats or feeling super powerful in my anecdotal experience. That being said, if discard is an archetype you really want to play, MODOK is a must-have card. Looking at this Nimrod image, which is also not updated, I should probably consider firing my editor, but he does have 3 kids to feed and is often up working late night getting these videos done, so perhaps we'll cut him some slack. Nimrod has been key inside of Nimrod decks, believe it or not, bigger destroy variations that are looking to be more combo focused, and there's a number of cards that offer additional destroy support coming inside of August, which I think give Nimrod potential to actually be better than it is now. That being said, I don't think any of the Nimrod decks that currently exist are top tier, so if you're in the market to play exactly those decks as you find them novel or sweet, worth picking up, but otherwise not a high priority card in my opinion. Moving along to Galactus here, who is now a 6/7 that has to be winning his lane in addition to being alone to blow up the board. I think Galactus is a little bit better than its play rate implies. It actually works quite well with Nimrod that we talked about a second ago. That being said, it's not super popular and doesn't put up super consistent numbers, so I think narrow and fine is definitely the category that it belongs in. Galactus is worth noting as a permanent Series 5 card, being it's never going to be cheaper than 6,000 tokens. And if you like the ideal of the novel gameplay that he offers, I think it is still worth picking up if you like exactly what it does. The way the current metagame is shaped up, I actually think Echo is a pretty solid tech card into the ongoing decks like Thanos, and if you pair her with something like Daredevil or get a little bit lucky, she can even have a reasonable text box into Devil Dinosaur and Darkhawk decks that are running around in the format as well. That being said, I don't know that Echo is really that much meaningfully better than other tools such as Enchantress and Rogue, so if you're looking to hate out those ongoing things that don't have an excess amount of tokens, I think holding off on Echo for the time being is quite a reasonable decision, especially while she's still Series 5. Honestly, Master Mold is probably borderline with the kind of bad category. It is a powerful and good enabler for Ronin, but Ronin decks haven't exactly been putting up numbers right now. I like the idea of the card go, so I edge it into narrow and fine. Pick it up if you want to play Ronin. If you don't like the idea of Ronin, don't consider it. Ghost Spider got a buff up to a 1/2, which is a big improvement from where she was before. That being said, move decks still aren't that powerful overall, but like many of the other cards in this narrow and fine category, if you really want to play movement, Ghost Spider doesn't have a good replacement, and she's a must pick up for that archetype to operate at close to maximum efficiency. Finally, let's close this bad Mamma Jamma out, breaking some hearts, including my own, with the kind of bad category. Teenage Warhead has a metagame that exists in a far distant land where she's quite good, I think. Unfortunately, we are not living in and have not been living in that metagame for quite some time. She's pretty bad right now. Howard the Duck is good in a Khazar ongoing deck because it hits the center of that Venn diagram of cards that get buffed by Khazar and Spectrum. Outside of that, not particularly useful, unfortunately. Kang. Oh, Kang. Only good if you're looking to waste everyone's time, including your own. Please play less Kang. It's really just not good, and it makes everybody else eye roll when its effect hits the board. Snowguard is a gorgeous piece of artwork, and honestly, I like the direction they took with its design, but it's just not powerful enough or consistent enough. The random element that this card has means it just doesn't do what you need it to do most of the time. I think she honestly needs a full redesign to be useful. Interestingly, Glenn Jones in a recent interview called out Spider-Man 2099 as a card that had a low play rate with a decent win rate. That being said, as someone who loves the idea of this card, and there's so many fantastic variants for it, I've tried a lot of different shells with it, and I can't make it work, or more specifically, anytime it does even manage to work, it feels like it was just a worse version of a different 4 energy tech card that I should be playing instead. If you found something that feels broken with 2099, I'd love to see it, but as is, I think, unfortunately, it belongs in the kind of bad category based on my experience with it. Stegron is a card that I've tried to make work as well, that I love the idea of, but it just doesn't have the stats to back it up. Only having 5 power as opposed to 6, like a lot of other utility 4-drops, makes it behind in terms of that. In a lot of situations, I would much rather Stegron just be Juggernaut when it comes to winning games, I think. Finally, we have the July Season Pass card, Phoenix Force, which despite getting a massive buff, still just feels incredibly outclassed in my experience against all of the good decks. Not only is it kind of inconsistent, getting something, blowing it up, and then reviving it with Phoenix Force, but with cards like Professor X out in Force, you're often getting locked out of a location on the board, really restricting its ability to move around profitably, and it just feels like a worse card than it was before the buff, honestly, because of the direction the metagame has shifted in. Series 4 and 5 are larger than ever, so I tried to be extra brief where I could today in my review of stuff, clocking in at just under 16 minutes to give some thoughts on every single card in this list. If you enjoyed those thoughts that I gave, be sure to snap that like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any other fantastic Marvel Snap content 7 days a week here in the future.